Hey, this is Ed Wade. I was Ezra Miller's acting double as Barry Allen in The Flash, and I also starred in the unreleased Batgirl movie as well. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Reddit's reviews and interviews.
How are you doing today, Ed? Great to see you.
Very well, Red. Thank you. Nice to see you too, mate. Nice to see you too. Appreciating your background art there as well. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, Batman. Here we go.
Yeah.
I'm a massive Batman fan, so like seeing the film with Keaton, it was just incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, the film was just such a blast. I think that's what really stood out to me. It was just like a really fun superhero film, for sure.
For sure. I mean, sitting in the audience, it was so fun to watch, but like making it was even more fun. not to take away from it, but like, yeah, it's so great to see the amount of like fun and love that we had for the project reflected on the end product. It's just so good to see. Really satisfying.
Well, I can't wait to get into all your really cool stories, but I'd like to start off, way back at the beginning of your career. So talk to me briefly about your beginnings as an actor. Did any sort of films or well-known actors inspire you to pursue that as a career?
That's a really interesting question, actually, about inspiration. I think for me, I was kind of being inspired. I can't pinpoint it on one specific moment. Maybe when I first watched The Matrix, actually, for the first time. But for me, like growing up, I started in a dance world. So my first taste of the performing arts was through dance, and I did lots of jazz. I did ballet a lot as a kid, and when I was 9, I think I started when I was 8, and by the age of 9, I was accepted into Scottish Ballet for 2 years on the Junior Associates program, and then I gave it 2 years over to my local dance teacher, Yvonne Gray, who basically got me into the most insane dance shape. She was incredible from the age of 12 to 14. And then that got me into the Dance School of Scotland, where I trained with some of the finest teachers in all of Scotland, which was amazing for 4 years. All funded, we had to audition when we were kids, and it was all like scholarship grant type things. We didn't have to pay for things. So it was a very specific, bespoke, amazing project. Schooling and education that I've ever had, I guess. And then from there, I got a scholarship to a college in London, where I trained for 3 years, and being in London and around the West End and stuff was just amazing. And then before I graduated, I got an agent and I went on my first show. And then, and the ball's kind of been rolling from there, really, predominantly on stage, which is the place where you learn, the place where you craft, and the place where you learn from your masters as well. It's such a dojo of its own kind, the theatre, because you watch, although you might be doing a scene opposite someone, you're always like watching what they're doing, or you could be stood in the scene and watching what someone else is doing, or off stage or something like that. And it's just amazing. There are so many talented people on stage, especially like in London and all around the UK as well. There's just this raw talent that just exists there. And so being exposed to that was super beneficial. And then, the pandemic kind of happened, and then I got The Flash. And that's kind of what took me up to this moment here with you, which is so exciting.
Of course. This is like highlight of your career, right here, right now.
I have reached the mountaintop.
For sure. So before we get into some of your acting work in the DC films, I want to know whether you were, sort of a fan of that before, prior to being in it. Were you following the whole franchise?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a real fan of superhero movies. Like, I've watched them pretty much my whole life since like the first Iron Man and Thor, like all the way back to like the original Man of Steel. I even remember going to see Superman Returns in cinemas as well, like that one with Spacey. And that was like an early conception into DC, I guess, as well. I was also raised watching like the earlier Batman movies, the sort of Tim Burton ones and the Clooney ones and the Schumacher ones. So I was always being influenced by them, and I was always enjoying them as well. And I enjoyed like the earlier edition of the Hulk, which I thought was, really different. It was like a real comic book adaptation of like an artist's mind combined with a comic book. I thought it was beautiful, and still to this day, I find that movie so kind of poignantly moving. It's sort of like a heartbreak story, the telling of the Hulk, and that's how it feels. And it's just so brilliant. Those were like the early steps. And of course the Dark Knight trilogy. I mean, being a kid, kind of a kid, that was coming out and just being so hyped about this movie, and the whole world was exploding after Heath Ledger, they gave the performance of his life, and my God, that was just so cool. And like, to have been in a film that is a part of that and part of that universe and part of the franchise is just mind blowing, man. Mind blowing.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't imagine how it must feel. You starred in the Batgirl film also that unfortunately hasn't been released, playing the role of Simon Lippman. Can you tell us a bit about your character and what you know about the reasons why the film hasn't been released?
So I can speak about the character for sure. The character Simon Lippman, he works in the Gotham Globe. He's a character that appears in comics sort of throughout. He's predominantly on Batman's timeline, Batman's world. That's where he appears more predominantly, the Batman universe. So this was a small character that kind of came up after my work on The Flash. At the end of The Flash, I play a reporter. And Galen Weisman, who's one of the executives for DC, who is in the process of writing Batgirl, was like, I think we've got a part for you. And then I got a call to say, yeah, come and play Simon Lippman, who's also a reporter. So there's a link there in a way. But yeah, dude, just to be a known named character in the DC universe is just the freaking wildest thing. It's so cool. To be able to have that as like a name and a tag and a link to that Eternal franchise is amazing. But as for the reasons that it came out, I don't know. I genuinely have no insight. All I know is that, you know, I worked very closely with some of the great producers on The Flash, and they are all human beings. Like the amount of empathy that they have for people that we know we're working on a big project and it's got to get done, but like the care they take of people in general, like goes without saying that they take care of like people's feelings as well. So to have to cut that movie short, like it must have been a really difficult decision from an emotional standpoint. Whether it be sensible from other angles, which is the reason, it's a heartbreaking moment when you have to release that news. And I don't blame anyone. I don't have any bad feelings towards anyone for not releasing it at all. I just think you've got to, you know, there's so much sorrow that we feel for the actors that were in it, the crew, you want to see their work, like all the directors, all the art, all the producers, like everyone all the way up wanted to see this movie come out. For it not to, it must have broken so many hearts, and like that's such a hard truth to face. But I feel in a subverted way that like that is very much like the DC universe. That is exactly, it's a bit dark. It doesn't flourish. It doesn't, you know, it is on the sort of darker stories within ourselves, and in comics as well. You know, it's not all flashy superhero endings. Sometimes it's like it kind of clunks like a grinding old gear in a way, and that's kind of maybe one of the cogs in the story of this tangled universe.
Wow, that's a really interesting way of putting it. So, and so you did Batgirl, and you also did The Flash. I assume you worked more so on The Flash. Was that a longer shoot for you?
It was indeed. For Batgirl, I was there for 1 week, and then for The Flash, I was there for 7 months. Yeah, so quite an enormous difference, to be honest. Yeah.
How did your general experiences compare, and what actors did you get to work with on Batgirl?
The general experiences were similar, very similar. Like when you work at that level, you work with those people, you know, you're always treated incredibly well. You've got people to look after you, lots of people to talk to. Everyone at that point as well in that level are, you know, at the top of their game. You know, people who are up and coming, whether you're a DOP or a grip or, you know, makeup artists or hair, like anybody in any department, you know, they're climbing for these movies, you know. So when you get up there and you work on that, so like on Batgirl, it was amazing because everyone was so polite, so kind, so on their stuff. There was no delay, there was no sort of amateur studenty feel about it. It was very, very well oiled, very well run, and they had a huge amount of moving parts. Batgirl, we were in a scene that was, I think it was about 200 extras or something, and the way that was run was just so smooth. It was moving them around, getting them ready, getting people ready, like doing all these takes and all these scenes that had to happen right before they wrecked the place with the spinning backflip onto the Christmas tree. You know, they and even then they were just able to reset and go again, and that itself was an absolute feat. And it was no different to being on The Flash. Like the Flash was always, the production was always one step ahead. You know, the Batcave was going to be finished by this time, and then we were going to go on to this location and that location. And even if there were problems, like, I don't know, say a prop broke or something, like the prop guys were there instantly with the next one, you know, ready. Their efficiency was so admirable. And everyone's, because it was for 7 months, and I was in the rare position being an actor on a movie for 7 months, like Ezra and I shared the similar experience of being the only actor that was there for 7 months. But just to to know that the crew and or everyone that was there in those rooms was doing the exact same thing. Like everyone was there for the passion, for the love, for the career moves that it made in their trajectory and things. And everybody just wanted to do well and did so. Everyone did an impeccable job. And that doesn't speak, this is glory that's given sometimes to actors, but it's not just that. Like you can't be an actor without all these components moving around you. So there's no part of me that feels like I did a better job than anyone else, or that my job was greater in any way. You can't do it without all these amazing people, and they just absolutely smashed it. So yeah, the project sizes were big, but they were just so well run, and people just gave so much to it. So yeah, pretty epic, man. Pretty epic.
For sure. And I mean, that professionalism really shows in the final product. It's superb.
It is superb. There is so many components and elements of it. I think when you go and watch a film, like a cast and crew screening, everyone's in there like looking at what they did in it. And there was nobody. I was sat next to like one of the guys from makeup, and he was like very happy with his work at the end. I mean, it's crazy. Like everyone's looking at their own element in the film, and
yeah,
most people, I think everyone was just buzzing by the end. No one really got lost a lot. Like sometimes your stuff gets cut, but there was a lot in that movie. That movie has so much in it, as you can see. It's just full of story and narrative and creation and fun and jokes and everything, and like epic scale stuff. It's fantastic. It's a full movie. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. So how did you first book that role for The Flash? And were there any sort of challenges or surprises you had to overcome in any way?
The audition came through, and one of the surprises was that I got cut first time from that movie. I sent off my tape, I did it, and my agent called back. It was for this unknown project at the time. My agent called back, "Hey, you didn't get this one." I was like, okay, as an actor, we all experience a huge amount of rejection, way more than yeses, but a lot of rejection. And I was just like, yeah, water on the bridge. 3 weeks later, I get a call. Oh, actually, they want to see you again. Can you come to London by Monday? So I drove down from Scotland, and then COVID test. And then Wednesday, I met, did a costume fitting where they measured me in a black skin tight lycra suit. And they measured like every single part of me, like within an inch of my life. And whilst I was in there, I was chatting to this guy. He was quite tall, sort of Argentinian guy. And we were just chatting away. And we spoke a bit about Argentina and rugby, because we have a common thread there and stuff. And yeah, it was really pleasant. And then after I said goodbye to them all, and I went back to my room, and I just was like, who was that guy? Oh, that's Andy Muschietti, the director of the movie. And I was like, oh my God. In a way that was better, because I didn't know who he was, but at the same time, I made a really relaxed, honest impression, connection with him in that moment, rather than being like, oh my God, that's the guy, I've got to impress him. I was like, oh shit, that was him, That was really cool. And then on the final day, there was another surprise in that. So they sent us the script, so we had to learn both sides of every scene. So the opening scene that we did, can I talk about the movie, by the way?
Yeah, for sure. Spoil it.
The bit in the bedroom when they first have their first conversation, and the light happening outside and blah blah blah. That was the first scene that we shot on the film, and that was the audition monologue, duologue as well. So I got in there, and I thought I was going into a room with like a panel of 10 people, like the director, 2 casting directors, like more producers, camera people, and maybe reading it with someone the lines. Then I was just going to stand up and turn around and walk out. It was not that, bro. I literally walked in, and it was me, Andy Muschietti, and Ezra Miller. And at that moment, that was the first time I met Ezra. And up until that moment, I knew that was the part I was going for by then. So I was like, I'm going to be the other Barry Allen in the Flash movie. That's all I knew at that moment. And we were going to have to change parts. That's all I had on information to go on. And so what I had to do was I had to study Ezra a lot. I studied their movements. I studied their choices. I looked at them in interviews. I looked on stage and performances. I was really trying to study the nuances, and especially as Barry, and the little clips that we had of Barry in the Justice League, the Joss Whedon cut, and in that tiny little cameo they make in, I want to say, Dawn of Justice, Batman versus Superman. There's like a tiny clip at the end. All these tiny little moments, I was like trying to piece together who Barry Allen, Ezra Miller was as Barry Allen, and then there they were. I walked into the room and I saw them. Like, right, this is the person I've been studying, and it was cool. And we sat down and we had a chat, and we just kind of chatted about like New York and a little bit about this and a little bit about that, and being from Scotland. And the three of us were just in this real kind of like soft, relaxed sort of chat. And then eventually it led into like, oh, should we give this a crack? Should we give this a go? So we looked at the lines, and Ezra and I started doing it, reading, sat down, and then we stood up, and then we got on our feet, and we started mimicking each other. And what was so strange is in this moment where we were crossing around each other, I was like, I need to dance here. I don't need to act here. I need to be dancing right now, because I was mimicking someone's movement. I realized in that moment, it was not about my interpretation. It's me mimicking someone. All like this job is going to be about dance. It's going to be choreography. It's going to be showing the steps and recreate them.
Yeah.
So in that moment, my mind totally switched, and I was like, this is the dance audition. Okay. So Ezra would like take a breath, big deep breath in, and I'd do the same, and I'd copy them. And then there would be choices that Ezra would do on one side, then we flip the roles, and I'd make the same choices that Ezra had made. So Ezra got a sense of playing with himself in a way. And after a while, we began to sort of laugh about it. We started joking about it. And at one point, like, there's this one line, and it's in the movie, actually. The line is set, it says, like, promise me this won't break your brain in, like, the universe and stuff. And then the young Barry gives it a pause. And then the older Barry goes, oh, shit, I'm in so much trouble. In the audition, Ezra, I was playing original Barry, and I went, please promise me this won't break your brain and, like, the universe and stuff. And Ezra just reached over and put their hand on my shoulder and just went, broski. And it made me laugh so hard. I folded over, like, bearing in mind, I'm trying to be as professional and good at this job as possible. And I just like folded in half. I was not. Ezra was like rolling with their head back, and then Andy was like laughing. He was filming on his iPhone, and we were just like this. And then for the rest of it, we were just kind of like fooling, like joking. And then we were like, okay, that's fine. They were like, it's fine. Okay, thank you so much. Like, we'll see you later. And Ezra was like, yo, where are you driving off to now? And I was like, where are you going back to? I was like, I got to go back to Scotland. And Ezra was like, you're driving to Scotland now? Like, I was like, yeah, it's where I live. It's where I got to go. It's where I got to be. And Ezra was like, man, geez. And they're like, this was during COVID and stuff as well. So like, it was a long ass drive, but and then I came out of the room, and then this guy called Joey Coxon, who was our second unit AD, was taking the auditions, came up and was like, oh, how was that, mate? And I was like, whoa, dude, I need like 2 minutes to just settle, because that was just wild. I said, how long was I in there for? And he was like, 40 minutes. And I was like, what? Like, that was insane. The time just like went like that. It was a proper straight. And then the whole way home, I was just daydreaming like about the whole thing. And I voice noted my family, like, oh, I just met Ezra Miller. Like, it was insane. And then I got home, spent Friday night there, Saturday, and then Sunday woke up. And now if any actors like listening to this episode, you will know that there is a hangover feeling that comes after an audition, and especially if it's an audition that you want. Like a job interview. You go to a job interview, you think you did really poorly, you might just forget about it. You think you did really good, you're going to remember it. And I knew I was like, I did good. I know I did good. So by Sunday morning, I was in a total state. I was like, what if I heard I'm not going to hear until Monday? And I was just panicked. So I was like, God. And at midday on that Sunday, my agent rang me. If your agent calls you on a Sunday, you answer immediately without hesitation. They're not even in office. Something's gone on. Like, this isn't a mistake. No code red. This is for real. Pick up the phone. They need you in London on Monday. Can you get back there? So I'm like, yeah. So I get in the car and I drive all the way back down to London. And then the next day I went for a scanning test where I stood in this cage with like 12 pillars all around me, and there was 140 cameras like mounted on there, and I had to stand in the middle just in my underwear, and they just took a picture of me, compiled me into like a 3D image pretty much, and then threw it across the ocean to the guys in LA to be like, right, what do you think of this guy? Little did I know that I was probably up against other guys at the time as well. I have no idea. And then I went home, and then I went to stay at my uncle's, and I stayed there for like all of Monday, all of Tuesday, Wednesday, and on Wednesday evening I was just so like, what is life? Like, what is going on? I'm going to try and sleep. So I put a movie on, fall asleep, and my agent calls me, and then I'm like, oh, this is the phone call. And I pick up the phone, and I have two agents, right? I have one who tells me I get the job, and one who tells me I don't get the job. I pick up the phone, and it's the one who tells me I don't get the job. And I'm like, I already know how this conversation is going to go. And I was in my mind, and then I said to him, I was like, hello, and he goes, hi, Ed. And I'm like, oh, it's you. He goes, yeah. It's like, you've heard, haven't you? He goes, yeah. You got it. Wow. And I said, one more. And I stood up and I screamed my head off like so loudly, like tore my throat to pieces. I was just like, oh my God. And then he was like, okay, Ed, we're going to sort through all the details. I was like, I know, that's fine, that's fine. He's like, we're going to get this deal sorted, blah, blah, blah. Go off and do your thing, and we'll come back and talk tomorrow. I was like, okay. And I looked outside. It was pouring rain. I grabbed my headphones, put them in, played some music, and went for a sprint down the street, like arms stretched behind me, screaming and hollering like an absolute lunatic, running through the rain. I hadn't told a single soul. I just took this one beautiful moment just for myself, and I ran so hard, so full and flat. Probably the quickest run I've ever been on, but like, I'm not surprised. I just had like rocket fuel in my brain. I was having the big dopamine explosion ever. And then the conversation started happening, and then I went in for costume fittings, and I went in for training to start training with the PT to get into some kind of shape that resembled Ezra's. And then I met Ezra there, and we just hung, and we rehearsed some scenes, we rewrote a couple of jokes and did a couple of things more. It was just play constantly. Me, Andy, Ezra, Sean, Brecky Drysdale, these were all the brains behind the character of Barry, really. And then it just developed and rolled and just kept turning, and it was just a beautiful thing. By the end, it was just 7 months went by, and it was the most amazing experience every single day on a movie set that I'd ever had. So it's just every day kept beating the next day. It was just so insane.
Wow. I mean, what a story about getting that phone call. Wow.
Yeah.
That must have just been, you must have felt on top of the world.
Dude, I felt
completely.
it's the biggest high I've probably ever had in my life. I mean, my first job, the first phone call for my first ever job, like auditioning for that and getting it. Yeah. Wow. That was super special. And then there was, there's like other jobs that have come along and I've just been so happy, or like seeing, like my team score and stuff. That's a great moment. It's similar to that, but nothing beats that. It was just so insane. Yeah.
Did you know from the get-go that your head was going to be kind of replaced by Ezra? Or was that something you found out later on, after that first audition?
No, I knew very much. So before I went in for my final audition with Ezra and Andy actually came to my office. We were all split up because of COVID, so we had little offices. And I was sat in one, and Andy came in one by one into each of us, but came to me and told me about the movie and what he knew the technology volume capture to be, which is what we used on the film. And I was at that point, and it was amazing. And I remember him starting to tell me the story, but I had a mask on at the time, and I was like, I'm gonna have to stop you right there. And I took my mask off, and I was like, this story is making me beam so much because it sounds amazing. Like I was getting this first-hand scoop of what this movie was going to be, the entire script, without reading it. Like I couldn't believe it. I was like, holy shit, this sounds incredible. And so I had to tell him, and luckily I got the job because I really wanted to do it after he told me. I mean, I wanted to do it always, but then I was like, I wanted to even more so. But yeah, that call was a rush, bro. Sorry, what was your question? Did I know how much?
Yeah, did you know that your face was going to be replaced? So yeah, you did.
Yeah, I did. I mean, it was another thing. Like when we were doing it, I think as well, there was like definitely a day or two when I was like, oh, I'm not really going to be in this. But every time I thought like that, I was like, shut up, Ez. Like, do you know how many people would pay to be in this position? And the fact that you are getting this experience to be on like a huge movie, doing as much as the lead superhero character, dressing up in superhero costumes, like the genuine ones, the actual ones that will be seen on the film. You are actually dressed as that superhero right now. You are going to be playing Barry Allen, and then you're also going to be playing Barry Allen. You don't get to play him just once, you play him twice. I was learning, I was watching. Ezra was amazing. I got to learn from Ezra. I got to learn from Michael Keaton. I got to learn from all these amazing stars. I got a front row seat to all of it. Dude, yeah, like even knowing that my face was going to be replaced, they could have replaced all of me. I could have been a floating crisp packet, and I'd still be like, wow, you know what I mean? But the fact this like rig right here and this hair was in it, and I'm just like, and people who've seen the movie are like, that's you. Like they're like, I know that's you, but it's not you. It's like, it's so bizarre. It's just been, dude, I wish everyone could see this movie through my eyes. I really genuinely wish, because it was just the most unreal experience. It was so wild and incredible for me. And I just wish I wore a camera to do it all, which I did. So probably someone could see all of it if they really want.
So as far as like technical insights go, what do you know about how your head was replaced? Because I saw a photo from the set where you had some sort of green rig coming out of your back. But what's that all about?
So we call that the scorpion rig. So the technology that was used to replace my head and face was a new technology called volume capture. Now, volume capture has sort of been around in the ether for a while now. It's been explored. People have been, tampering with it and like trying to use it on like smaller scales and stuff. But The Flash was the first movie that used that technology fully for the first time for an entire feature. The way it worked was I had to wear this rig on my back. So it was this hardback plastic rig with like, that was tailored to basically fit my skin pretty much. It was so tight, but it was breathable and, all those things. Out the back came 2 prongs, and then the scorpion rig was like shoved into it and tightened, and then it was there. And on the top was a 360-degree camera. So the camera was, in essence, really the most important part, because what that was doing is it was recording everything that I saw. So it recorded lighting, it recorded the setting, it recorded all of what I saw. It even recorded Ezra's face opposite. And what that did was then in the later stages of the tech is they would put Ezra in the middle of this room, and around them would be all these TV screens. And Ezra would be able to watch everything that I saw that day on that camera. So that 360-degree camera was playing back in everything that I saw. So Ezra was able to see himself, was able to see the crew, was able to see the setting, the lighting, all the bits and bobs that go around on a normal film set that you always ignore. Sometimes there'll be a camera like shoved right in your face, but you're not looking at the camera, but even though you know it's there. So Ezra could see the camera, Ezra could see everything that I saw. And whilst they were in there was 140-something cameras pointed at their face that was, again, turning them into a 3D image, their face, and they could just plaster that on top of mine. So once that was done, it was just a case of like putting that on there and adjusting it and like cap everything that went on with it as well. Yeah, it was kind of wild. It was just this like amazing technology that so many people gave chunks of their life to eliminate this mush, to get rid of this. And I saw some editors at the red carpet, and I was like, you probably hate this face, right? You never want to look at it again. And they said something, they were like, we felt so much for you because you gave so much to this movie, and we really enjoyed your performances. And it's such a shame that we'll never see it, but you did such a great job. They said some really nice things, so I'm super happy.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great praise. Was there a moment or a scene that was, you enjoyed filming the most, or one that was more challenging, or just anything like that stands out to you?
Right away, I'd probably say the lightning scene. There's a moment at which the lightning comes through the lab, crime lab, hits original Barry in the back, then the lightning pops out and passes into young Barry. And the way it was filmed was on this thing called a phantom camera, and it moves a lot like a car factory arm, like those technological ones, like that build the...
Yeah.
But a camera was mounted on it. It was capturing at 600 frames a second, so super fast slow-mo tech. It took an enormous outside team to come in and film that as well. And what they had is they had this LED rig that was showing the path of the lightning that came through, striking the chemicals, and then these sort of luminous cylinders were what they used for the lightning in the Flash scene. So whenever the Flash went anywhere, these little columns of light would flash, and you'd get an idea of the light on the face and stuff. So it was really like smart techniques and stuff. So anyway, there was one of these columns that was sat between the two of us, and I play young Barry in the take, and Ezra plays original. And we kept practicing, and we practiced it a couple of times with the phantom camera moving. And as soon as I saw that light, like an F1 driver, I had to react and throw myself back and just get electrocuted like that. And we did it quite a few times, and just practicing. And then they were like, right, Ed, we're going to go for real this time. You need to really be on it. And I was like, I will. And I went into this absolute tubular focus moment. And if you ask Ezra about it as well, Ezra and I still chat about it, it was like, I lost you that day. Well, you went to hyper focus. I've never seen anyone do that. And I was like, because I don't want to screw this take up, because I know who I am in this scene. I'm not Ezra Miller. You want Ezra Miller in this movie twice. I'm just this kid from Scotland. I have to nail this. I can't be holding up production. So I always put myself in this super warped mind frame. I was like, as soon as that light goes, throw myself. And that was so hard. And they went 3, 2, 1, action. And this arm moved through, and then the jars exploded. So we were being covered in water. And as soon as I saw that light, I threw myself as fast as I could, threw my back out, just get electrocuted. And we did it. And we went to go watch the monitors. And by that time, we were all covered in water, and there's wardrobe padding us down and stuff. And we went to go quickly watch it on the monitors. And we were late. And I tell them, and they're like, okay, we'll go again. So we had to do another one. Ezra, you were early. Ed, you were late. And we kept going, and we did it 3, maybe 4 times. And then on this 4th or 5th take, we did it, and we were just both like so tight in this zone of like, go on the light, go on the light. And we did it, and it's the take you see in the movie. And it was just this amazing like moment of like tech, direction, idea, inspiration, and two actors that had to execute. And yeah, we got it, and it looks fantastic in the movie. You see that like really like working super well. So yeah, that was pretty terrific. That was a really intense moment. Also for me, the whole shoot was kind of intense because I had to wear this witness camera on my back the whole time, and it was really hard rigid plastic, but it was really hard to wear at times, and it made it harder than it had to be. However, I knew what the gig was, and we eventually started finding comfy places for me to like lie down and, you know, take the weight off and stuff. It became more simpler towards the end. So yeah, that was cool.
For sure. So when you're acting with Ezra, did you have to make sure, you know, you're standing in a certain place in a certain way and you've got to do this at a certain timing? Or how did you, you know, get everything completely in sync?
That's very much what I meant by like in the audition. I was like, this is a dance. It was, you know, it's sort of a very stale way to do acting. Like, you know, when you work with directors and creators and people like that, they like, when you're in a play for so long, they're like, keep it fresh, keep new ideas coming. Like, don't drastically change anything, but just keep it light, keep it fresh. Like, try things, like offer things, like accept things, blah, 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 all that kind of talk that you have. And so for me, it was kind of the opposite. I was like, I know what was done. I can't freestyle on this, because when we start the day, we'd start as Ezra as one Barry and me as the other. Now, because of what Ezra was doing and what Ezra was thinking, I had to think about the other character and what they would do. So there would be days when we turn up to set and I'd ask Ezra, I'd be like, what do you want young Barry to do this moment? What do you want original Barry to do this moment? And at the beginning of filming, it was very tricky for us to like figure our way around that. Because I remember on the first day, I was like, Ezra, what do you want me to do? And Ezra was like, oh God, right. Yeah, do this. And then gave me an idea. And I was like this. And Ezra was like, yeah, that's good. And then by about like week 2 of doing it every day like this, we were like, I felt a bit more confident. I was like, yo, I'm doing this for you. Do you want that? Or do you want me to cut it for the next take? And Ezra was like, oh no, I like that. I like that. That's good. And then Ezra would do it. You know, so like after every take,
that teamwork.
Yeah, like teamwork, exactly, like collaboration. And then by the end, you know, like, you know, every day we'd have to switch around. So I would have to do exactly as Ezra did, because for continuity, the take would be scarpered if I did something different every time and wasn't doing what Ezra was doing. So I was just literally repeating choreography in a way, and that began to work. So Ezra knew what they had to play against on the reverse. At the beginning, it was kind of loose. It was kind of free, and we were free forming. And then Ezra knew that some things that I did, Ezra would have to do, but not so much, because Ezra had the freedom. But I knew certain things that I had to do in order to make the take consistent.
Right.
So yeah, but it was difficult to begin with. But then by the end, like, we were just like, yeah, I know, blah, 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 like, and I was like, what if and then I started asking Ezra, I was like, what about this? And Ezra was like, okay. And then we did it. Like, the come on Barbie, let's go party line in the movie was just something I threw in one day, and it made it into the film. Like, there's just like little things that we just played with and toyed and tried, and
that makes sense.
Just, yeah, there's so many things. There's so many things that me and Sean Rogers gave to, you know, to make those characters who they are. And Ezra was so beautifully and warmly accepting of all our ideas. There's no point in which Ezra was like, or get, you know, rude about anything at all. Even if there was something that was like dog shit to suggest, like really bad, like wouldn't stick or wouldn't fly, Ezra would be like, no, what else? You know, like, Ezra was so kind and welcoming. And as a creative, sharing creative spaces, like, to have that teamwork, like you said, you know, to be able to collaborate, it's just amazing, man. It's just so cool.
Yeah. So of course, Ezra's been under quite a bit of controversy recently, but in your experience collaborating with him, you seem to have, you know, a completely positive experience there.
I do, yeah, I do. And, you know, the relationship that I have with Ezra is like such a special one that we all shared in on The Flash. Like, we all made this amazing movie with this amazing individual who stood at the front every day and led the charge in a way, but in a beautiful manner that never made anybody feel small or insignificant. There was never any moment that it was like us and them. It was Ezra as one with the crew and with everyone there. It was such a beautiful way to work and a thing to have. And like, there were things like birthday celebrations that would happen, and like nights out that Ezra would, like organize to be a part of, or
So nice to hear.
every time we had a birthday, Ezra would be leading the charge on Happy Birthday and I had to sing it. And there was just lovely, beautiful, like seminal moments when we were all just like living like real people as well in amidst this like movie man. There was just moments of like generosity and kindness, and due to it being locked out, I mean, not many, COVID and stuff, not many people could bring their friends and family to set, but those who could did, like for example, Andy and Barbara, like the guy who was our boom operator, Keaton, for the movie, his kids, he's from Glasgow, and his kids are actually in the film. There's a scene where the Batman throws like a stud thing to stop cars from turning in front of the bus load of kids, and they turn off to the left, and then the kids get the shot of them be like, whoa, like that, and the kids in that are like Keaton's kids. Like there's moments like that they honored and like reserved, and were like, you know what, these are people's families and stuff in this movie. Let's honor, give them their moment to shine. Like for me as well, like they gave me that little scene at the end. I was just so happy. Like they didn't have to give me that. There was not in my contract or anything. It was just love in the room and in the air. And whenever like a big player finished, a big actor, for example, like Keaton, they made a Keaton cake and we had a big celebration, and the Keaton boys' family to set and stuff. Like that was the kind of environment that was laid. And then there was like when Sasha left, it was like a beautiful ending to her time on set as well. And then for mine as well, like, and I didn't think I was gonna get one because the movie's not really about me, it's about these big players and stuff. Anyway, as soon as it rolls out, I was doing my last take on my last day, which was the penultimate day of filming for the whole thing. They went, Michael Lerman, who's the first AD, he'd normally jump on the mic and say, ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap on Michael Keaton, or ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap on Sasha. There was that kind of speech. And then for me, he said something so like moving. It makes me like, he went, ladies and gentlemen, there is one person in this movie who has been has had like one of the most important roles. We had no idea how much he would have to do. And this is his first movie. He has done so incredibly well. And it is my great honor to say, ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap on Ed Wade. And I turned around and I had no idea, but there was like almost 100 people like standing behind on this set, and they were just standing there like applauding me. And I feel so emotional talking about it now because it was such a really like truly lovely moment. Like I did so much work on the movie. I haven't really spoken about it this way for like some time. But yeah, it was beautiful. Like it was so nice. And they wheeled out this trolley, the beds, like a trolley. No, it was actually just a trolley, but it was like covered in donuts, and it had like a green witness camera above it, and there was just donuts for everyone to have outside, and written on the donuts was something like "Goodbye, Ed, we love you," or like "We love you, Ed," or something like that. And it was just so beautiful. And I got this applause for like, I don't know how long it was. I think it was like 45 seconds or something. And then I said a few words to acknowledge and say thank you for welcoming me into this world. I've got to know and love you all so personally, and I'm so grateful for that. So thank you for making this movie amazing, and something like that. And then everyone one by one just came up and gave me this hug and just said, "Well done, mate! Like well bloody done." And I don't know. It's like the difference between stage and film. Like you do stage, you walk on stage at the end of every night, and you get this rapturous applause, and everyone gets applauded for the job they did. Like who in any other profession walks out the office to a round of applause other than those who work on the stage? Yeah. And then we did this movie, and I, everything was so different to me, because it was my first one. And then they applauded me at the end, and I was so overwhelmed. I'm not afraid to admit it. I went back to the trailer, and I remember I said Ezra was like a healer, like with music. Like Ezra would just carry this boombox around and play like music to create beautiful vibes with the filming. Ezra and I shared a trailer next to set, and I just banged at Ezra's door and I said, "Hey, can I just borrow your speaker for 1 second?" And Ezra was like, "You want to listen to it in here?" And I was like, "No, I think I just need a moment alone." And I went next door and I played this song that like has an enormous effect on me in so many ways. And Ezra and I listened to it one night whilst hanging out, and Ezra said, "Do you want to hear the most Barry Allen song ever?" And played this song. And we both sat there and listened to it, and it's so beautiful. And then in that moment I went through to my trailer and I just belted this song on, and I just turned it up to 100. And I broke down and I started crying, and Ezra was banging on the door like, and then jumped into my trailer and then just held me. Ezra held me while I howled. I cried. I bawled my eyes out for like 3 minutes straight, and Ezra stayed with me singing this song, and we were screaming the song in each other's faces, and I grabbed Ezra around the head like this, and Ezra grabbed me, and we pressed our heads together. I looked him dead in the eye and I said, thank you so much for making me feel as sick as I thought I felt on the inside. You have made me feel amazing, and I owe this experience to you. Thank you. And Ezra was like, I owe everything to you in this as well. And we were just so grateful and appreciative of each other in that moment. And the tears just kept falling and running, and it was just insane. It was just remarkable. And to have had those moments and those memories, you know, now forever, I'll never be able to like truly share with everyone or anyone the impact that job like had on me, and how kind of hard it's been to like, you know, to have had that and then step away and, you know, like, dude, like I wait tables now, you know, like that's the actor's gig. That's what you do, is you have super highs and then you just like keep yourself going until the next one comes along. And you know, and I've worked in the time in between, you know, I've done some amazing jobs with some amazing people, and I'm so grateful for those experiences. But to have come down from this high was just so hard, and to go back to waiting tables is tricky. It's difficult mentally and financially and all those kinds of things. But you know, I wouldn't change a single thing. I wouldn't change it. You know, I had that experience, and I've had this, and I'm just going to live through all of them now. You know,
that's such a heartwarming, you know, ending to your time on set.
Yeah,
it's incredible. What song were you listening to?
The song we were listening to was called "Wake Up" by Arcade Fire. If you are anywhere in the world right now, or you are listening to this episode, come back. At the end of this, go and listen to "Wake Up" by Arcade Fire. I also have a playlist of all the songs that Ezra played whilst on set. I had Shazam on my phone, quoting another great DC movie. You know, and I was just like pressing listen, and what is this song? And I added it to this whole playlist. I've got like, I don't know how many songs, like 8.5 hours of music of all the songs we listened to on set, like at different moments, like when we were on a location. So I listen to this playlist now, and I remember where we were and what we were doing when this song came on.
Yeah.
So I've got this really beautiful. If you wanna like listen to it, it's called Flashy, and it's on my account called Ed Wade. So yeah, if anybody wants to listen to everything that Ezra and I were listening to whilst we were making this movie, please just jump on and give it a listen. But go and listen to "Wake Up" by Arcade Fire first. That's the entry rule. Okay, you promise?
We'll check that out for sure. Wow. So, did it take time for you to sort of establish that rapport with the cast and crew? And were you at all intimidated by the scale of the film? Like, you must feel quite a bit of pressure and responsibility there.
Yes and no. The sort of sense of responsibility came a lot later, by the time, you know, when I met Andy and I didn't know who he was, it was kind of like that experience for me being on set, because I turned up and the whole experience was so fresh for me. Like the first day of filming, we filmed the Jeremy Irons scenes where he plays Alfred. We filmed it in this studio at Warner Brothers. And they asked me to come in and read Ben Affleck's Batman lines on the side next to Ezra to Jeremy Irons, so that he had someone to read with. And that alone was like the biggest thing I've ever been asked to do in my whole career so far. I was like, I can't believe I'm here. And I remember sitting on an Apple chair, you know, one of those director chairs next to Ezra. And Ezra was like telling me, like, knew it was my first film. So he was explaining to me like what these things, like we need a wild track, we need you know, going like just like little bits of film jargon that I'm kind of new anyway, but didn't really have this education on like too closely. So Ezra was telling me bits about it, and then Jeremy Irons, who's just British acting royalty, just like wanders out, and I'm like, there's a famous person in front of me, like that's Jeremy Irons, like I know who that actor is. And he just came over and was just having this sort of 3D interaction with us and just shaking his hand. And like at one point he was rolling licorice cigarettes, and Ezra and Andy and me, we just looked at him rolling a cigarette, and Andy was like, I'm going to go for a smoke right now. You know, because Jeremy was going out for a smoke. So he's like, I'm going to go for a smoke right now. And Ezra was like, yeah, I'm going to go for a smoke right now. And I was like, I'm going to go for a smoke right now. And so we bundled outside, and it was me, Andy, Ezra and Barbara talking to Jeremy Irons. We were just standing around in the kind of cold of April that it was, and we were just smoking and like chatting. And Jeremy Irons said something really funny. Actually, he was like, because he did a movie. I can't remember what it's called now. It's like, but he basically played a double. He played himself twice in the movie.
Right.
And Jeremy Irons was like sort of looking at us and being like, so you two are doubles? And like, yes. He goes, I had a double once. He was shit. And I was just like, me and Ezra looked at each other, and he was making us laugh so much because he went on, he was like, every decision that guy made, I didn't do. And he was awful. He just kept going in. And it's so funny because Ezra and I was like, each other like, fuck, we might have this experience where it's just like, oh God, what if you're actually really bad? But luckily we'd be through the audition process. But in that moment, I was kind of shook.
Yeah.
What the same thing happens, but it was really funny. And like, oh yeah, we spoke about that. But that was day one. Like that was kind of like where the bar was set. So I was like, okay, yeah, what's day going to be like? And then day two was like the scene of the two of us in the thing, you know, doing that scene, and we were reading the lines about boats that can fly and being struck by lightning, and you know, just all this kind of stuff. And we rehearsed it a lot earlier, and so we were kind of ready going in. So we hit the floor like running, but I was just like, why? This is what we do. Like we rehearse and then we come in and we do the scene. Like that's just playing. That's just what we do in theatre. But you don't work on a whole play. You just work on a scene, on a couple of lines. You learn how to do it. You figure it out and you do it. You make sure it makes sense. And he was like, oh, okay, this is just what we do. So the whole time I was there, I was focusing more on the process of like what to do, like mimicking Ezras, doing Ezra's thing correctly. And it was only until like maybe that we were almost halfway through the run or whatever it was. At one moment, I do remember being like, yo, this is actually a really big deal. I was like, I know this isn't normal, but I didn't know that this was above normal. Like, this is huge. This is really massive. And so I was like, well, it's too late for me now to go and like try and correct my behavior because I've behaved up until the way I have up until now. And, you know, I was like, God, I like had some experience of working on stage, like, or in other jobs and stuff, working with people. Because I could be the most obnoxious guy on the earth, you know, if I'd rocked up and be like, you know, like, I'm in a movie, like, don't care, like, whatever. But I was just so grateful that I knew how to not hold myself in a kind of, you know, like dweebish way to be like, oh, yes, so yeah, I'll do whatever, yes, please. I was like, no, I get this. Like,
yeah.
And I did, and I was, when I was halfway through, I was like, fuck, I'm doing it. And there was this beautiful moment, actually, when, oh, God. So I watched, there's a cut of the movie called The Ed Cut. And I've seen it, and this great guy called Will was working on it for me, and he not for me but for whoever. And one day I was crossing the lot, and this guy Will stopped me and goes, hey Ed, how are you? And by that time I'd met so many people, I just went into I didn't recognize him, and it was really awkward. And I was like, hi mate, yeah, how are you? Great to see you again. And he was like, oh no, we haven't met. I'm Will, by the way. And I was like, oh cool. Wait, how do you know who I am? And he goes, well, I'm doing the Ed Cut. And I was like, the what? He says, oh, did you not know? I'm piecing together a movie with you in it. That's my job. Like, that's why I'm here. And I was like, oh, I should know nothing about it. I was like, okay, cool. So anyway, this leads in because on the last day of filming, I went to his office and he showed me the Ed Cut, and it was amazing. He done such a great job, and I got to see like my acting. But Red, let me tell you, like my first day choices, I watched the film footage that we took on day one, and I was like, oh, bro, I was like kind of mortified. It wasn't great. It was not good. I was really trying too hard. And in that moment, I was like, bro, like, you don't act like how you do on stage, how you do on film. I was like, there is such a different art to here. You don't just, like, how you do on film is not what you do on stage. It's two different things. I could see myself in that moment being like, oh God, Ed, like, you really were gunning for it at the beginning. But then in filming, like, I learned how to do it. I learned how to be more of a film actor. Subtleties and, like, less push and more kind of depth in a strange sort of way. But you sit more with it. You don't, like, try and sell it like you do when you're a stage actor. You just have to sit with it. And it's such a cool way to learn. And I was watching some takes back. And Ezra and I were always given, like, iPads after each take so we could see what we were doing. So I could copy Ezra and blah, blah, blah. When we were watching playback, one day of a scene in the Chronoball when we were running side by side, and I turned to Ezra and I went, and I was like, I looked at myself in the footage and I was like, I've gotten better, haven't I? And Ezra was like, yo, dude, you're like a full film actor now. And I was like, I can't believe it. Like, this was this was the thing about this journey for me, is that I came in as this thing and I left as this like, changed by this project. And Ezra was like, kudos to you, bro. Like you look really good now. Like you're doing really well. And yeah, that was just super sweet of them to say that. Like they didn't have to, but like, because we were working so closely every day and I was so enamored by Ezra's performances, like every time I was like, God, you're just so beautiful. And you're also like so talented. I'm like, God, she's got it all. And then for them to turn around and be like, yo, you're dope. Like as well. Like at the end of the time, I was like, wow, that's really words to hear. And it kept going a bit.
Incredible. We need to start like some sort of petition, release the end cut. We got
to release Batgirl, #, release the end cut. Yeah. Yeah.
What was the reason that they were like, that they did that? Was that like,
I don't know. I mean, dude, I mean, the guy Will, he's an amazing editor, by the way. He's super talented. It might have been like a project for him. It might have been for them to have. I don't know. Like it's just this other thing. And I mean, I really am gonna, pray to whoever that one day I do get that footage, because it would be so wonderful to see. And look, I won't release it to the world. I won't release it globally, but I might watch it with like my mom and my dad, and like my close loved ones. Just, see what I did, as choices. And I'm gonna cringe so hard, I know, because some of the earlier shots I've been like, oh, Ed, like you look so bad, but some of the takes I saw in the end cut were actually kind of good. And not to be too like overly thinking about the career and the drive here, but if I had that footage, it'd be so good for like my career and my exposure and stuff, because I've had a little bit because of this movie, but it would help a little bit more if I had that as well, for sure. By the way, how is that person, and here's me doing it.
Yeah, you should definitely like reach out or something and get that in your show reel.
Yeah, exactly. That's the hope, man. So I'm really I've got some beautiful friends at Warner Brothers now, and people I like value very closely and stuff. So I'm sure when they know the time is right, they won't hesitate. I'm sure they'll just be like, here you go. But I can't wait to see it, man. I'm really excited to see it. It'll make me cringe, but it make me very happy as well. Sure, yeah.
I mean, we've touched on this a bit already, but it must have been, it's insane being on the set, but especially, seeing the Batcave and the Batmobile. What was it like for you to be a part of, Michael Keaton Batman's return? Because you said you used to watch his films, so was that almost nostalgic for you?
Bro, it was insane. So so the Batcave was being built when I first auditioned for the job, and we didn't jump into the Batcave until like towards halfway through filming. So there was this ominously massive film stage that was being filled with this set. And every day you'd like drive past or walk past and you'd see a new piece in place, another ramp, another stalactite hanging from the ceiling. And you just be like watching this stuff going in. It's being painted every day, slowly, piece by piece. So always whilst we were filming, we always in the back of our mind were like, the back is being built right now. And we were lucky enough. I mean, I certainly was. I think Ezra and Sean, all three of us were, in that we didn't get to see it until it was completed. We didn't get to go in until it was completed. And we had this moment where, I don't know if you remember the movie, but we dropped down this pipe and we go in through the Batcave. So that was an entrance to the cave, one of only about 6 or 7. And we played the Keaton, the original Danny Elfman soundtrack as we walked out. And we walked out onto this set. And it was the most impressive set I've ever seen in my entire life. I see stuff from like Lord of the Rings, those movies back then. It doesn't compare. And Lord of the Rings is my favorite franchise of all time. Like I love those movies. But this was just different. It had height. It had running water. It had, stalactites hanging from the ceiling. It had the Batmobile in one corner. It was really hard to navigate the Batcave as well, actually, because there was these tiny little ways. And all the time we were walking on rock. And Paul, who designed it, did this phenomenal job. Like, so it all looked like random stone, but it was taken from 7 casts. So 7 casts just cut up in different ways and like different formations, painted time and time again. Like the amount of work, dude, that went into running it, and the water like running around. It held us in this like sort of place for like 2.5 weeks, and we didn't leave there, and we filmed everything. 2.5 weeks was done in that space. And we saw that I got to jump in the Batmobile. I got to like, be up on the middle platform, like all by myself at points. there was just like, I got to be part of like a running scene where we ran through where we used like 4 or 5 doubles. Like we used 4 or 5, it's a take that's not in the film, but you know, Barry like runs all over the cave. So we had to use different doubles. We had like stuntmen, we had stand-ins, we had me, the acting double. We had like all these different parts. And then right at the end, and we had Ezra doing a stunt, and it was all done on this like spider cam wire that like flew overhead, like flew over us, and us all like pretending to run, and then there's lightning things flashing right by our feet. Camera would swing to the next one, and it was all done in this gorgeous wonder. And I'd run full, and then flash, 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 and then Ezra would come out in this wire, running, slipping, sliding, going towards the edge of the Batcave, just with the rope around him, like on a sheer drop. Yeah, dude, it was so sick. It was so cool. We worked in there for like 2 weeks, but man, seeing that set, and I even spoke to some people who had obviously been in movies for a long time, and they were like, "This is the most impressive set I've ever been on," and just, man, it was so remarkable.
Yeah. You know, how many of us fans are jealous of you by the, you know, going in the Batmobile and all that?
Dude, it was mind-blowing. Like, yeah, I'm like a fan. Like, I know I'm a good fan. Like, I'm not, you know, as privileged to have had, you know, the knowledge of Batman or like know everything about it, and then to have had that experience. But even for me, like, knowing my love for those movies and like franchise and the whole DC thing, like the Zack Snyder cut, like all the stuff that I've been attuned to over the years, like just being like, fuck, I really love this. I really love this like talk, this telling of it, and you know, it's just like to be in this, but like this thing of what it was immense. It was so powerful, and Andy Muschietti was the one who took the photo. If you see on my Instagram, there's pictures of me in it.
Yeah,
and Andy was like, you know, give me your phone, like, and he was like, I was there, I was like posing in it, and he was just embrace it, man. And that was the thing, is I had that experience is, you know, with only such a few people. Like Ezra and I were the only two that got to like really work very closely with Keaton, or get in the Batmobile, or, you know, do certain stunts and stuff, or like cry at each other, or like push our emotional boundaries, or laugh about all this stuff and get all this really close, personal, intimate time together, like doing this amazing stuff. It was just so special, man. It was truly the most special experience of my whole career, and I can't thank Andy and Barbara and Disco and Marianne and like all the producers and everyone at Warner Brothers, Galen, you know, Walt, for just like trusting me with the job that I had to do, because as well, we didn't know really how much I'd have to do in this movie. It was like, oh, Ed will be acting double. And then I was contracted for like 77 days. And then by the end, I was on like day 117, 118. You know, it was just like, I'll keep going. Like, I will just keep doing whatever you want. But I had no idea, like, the scale or the amount I'd be in the film, you know. So just so, yeah, it's just, dude, it was just insane. It was just insane. Yeah.
Can you share any maybe like standout moments or memories of Keaton?
Sure. Yeah. Keaton is an actual real life ninja. We had this amazing moment where we were talking through Keaton's entrance, but we find him, you know, swinging around the pot rack, you know, in the opening scene, first time we see him. And yeah, I remember like we met him, and he was like super kind, super humble, like super close. And by that point, we were only doing like elbow handshakes and stuff. And he was cool and confident and relaxed, like learning his lines, like really going through it, really studying the text, like seeing an actor in their, what do we call it, in their shit. Like you're like, that's the craft, like that's the thing. And just seeing him go through it, using him like using hands and hitting moments and boom, and he uses boom a lot. And yeah, just seeing him in his thing. And then there was the moment where we sort of rehearsed, and then Andy was like, okay, so Keaton, just so you know, on an iPad, he was like, this is the stunt that will happen just before your entrance, blah, 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 so you know what it looks like. He's like, oh, so I get up on the table. He jumps up on this kitchen table, on this kitchen counter, and starts like walking across it. And we're like, yeah, dude, like, get down. Like, you could hurt yourself. But he was just up there just like, yeah, what's up? Like, just looking at the thing. And then he went to get down, and I gave him his hand, and he's like, oh, thanks. And he dude just like hit the deck, like on his feet, and just like carried on walking. Dude's like 69. Like, we were like, like, he's a ninja, like finding youth shit. Like, he's just like,
yeah,
how's he doing that? Anyway, it was just like, that's Batman. That is actually Batman. Like, that was really cool. There was like a moment when Ezra and I were leaving set one day where he turned around and told us about the shield moment in Batman 89, where he's running away from the car and he's like, shield. And at that moment, he was like carrying a face visor, like COVID shield. And he was like, every time I carry one of these, I just think shield. And Ezra and I were just like, looked at each other, was like, it's Michael fucking Keaton, bro. Like, it was just insane. And then, yeah, and he's Scottish as well, and I'm Scottish. And really beautifully, he came over to me one day when we were in the back of actually, and was like, hey, Ed, are you Scottish? I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, my mother's from Aberdeen. And we kind of talk about that for a bit. And then we were like chatting at dinner one time. And then my last day, he said something really special. Like, he said something really nice. He's like, Ed, I will always remember you as the most patient and professional actor I've ever worked on this movie. Sorry. I was like, whoa, like, bro is so kind. Like, he's really such a sweetheart, like such a generous dude. But like, there's a scene also that was cut, but hopefully we might get it in the Andy Muschietti cut and the director's cut. But we were like doing chest compressions on like Ezra just as they've come out in the lightning cloud, and that stupid girl lays her down. And we're like, wake up, and we're both falling over each other. And then Keaton comes over and he's meant to administer CPR. And then like just goes away, turns away, like in sorrow, like we didn't save him. And like, yeah, like crying over Keaton, like just like grabbing him and stuff, and him like throwing me off, and just like working with this amazing energy from this, world class actor was just so cool. And he just like, whatever it was, we threw at him, like whether it be a line or a joke or a jab, or like he just like responded in a very Keaton-esque way, which is so iconic to see.
Yeah.
There was a moment we were stood by the water in the back cave, and Ezra goes, just like goofing around, goes, hey, Michael, you go fishing much? And they just looked at the lake and they just both started giggling, and they were like, you like fishing? You go get yourself some catfish and all this. They were just like goofing out, and then Keaton's like laughing, and then he turns around and he goes, I love me some fishing. He's just like, so goofy for like just one split second. It was so funny. We were just,
yeah.
Is that kind of like Beetlejuice character just popped over us for a second. We're like, good Beetlejuice as well, bro. It was so wild. It was so cool. And then and then when I got to work with him on Batgirl again, and same thing happened. He saw me before I saw him, and he came over. He was like, hey, Ed, how are you? And I was like, Mike, like, so good to see you. Because I thought he would. Part of me was like, oh, he won't remember me. Like, first thing he did, like, beeline for me, it was like, yo, Ed, great to see you again. I was like, Keaton, mate, so great to see you. And we chatted. He's like, yo, you still in touch with Ezra? And I'm like, yeah, we talk a bit and stuff. And yeah, it was just super beautiful. And then there was a scene in Batgirl where it was me, J.K. Simmons and Michael Keaton, and it was just awesome. It was so cool to work with them both. And I got to chat to J.K. Simmons quite a lot, and just learned. He started on stage as well. Like he was a stage actor, and he did like small fringe theatre things. And then, his career kind of like blossomed from learning his craft on stage. We were chatting about that, telling jokes, and just like talking about scripts and stuff and things. And it was really sweet. And then Michael came along, and we started chatting about other stuff as well and things. And JK and Michael Keaton were like just like chatting back and forth. And he's like, I really loved you in that thing you were in. And then Keaton's like, oh, thank you. Oh, you're doing that thing to JK. And JK's like, yeah, it's cool. But they're just two guys. Like, they're two entities that work in the same industry that massively respect each other. And I don't know if they know each other or if they have worked together before, but they were just like so great, like just so humble, kind and loved dudes. Like, we get to be where you are by being a dickhead. They're truly are nice guys and sweethearts, real sweethearts. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it must have been just mind blowing to witness all that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
What's it like wearing that, Flash costume? Was it an actual costume, or was some of it like CGI?
Majority of filming, it was the real thing, and it was the real rubber. So we had two suits. We had obviously the Flash one, and then we had the Bat Flash one, and then we also had the Dark Flash. So that was an entirely different thing. So most of the time we were either switching between the actual Flash costume or the Bat Flash costume, just like rotating between two. And the thing about like wearing those things is you feel so awesome, man. I remember like getting dressed up in the candy red one for the first time, just being like cowl on, just looking at myself in the mirror and just being like, holy shit. And then like watching the film like again and seeing that that's me in that suit, even though my face is in there, but I know that's me. I was like, rah, I'm actually that hero. Like it was so insane to like be like, this is the Flash costume from the Flash. It's not some kind of like Comic-Con attempt at it. It is the real thing. It is the actual thing that they will preserve in like a glass box one day. You know, that's it. The level of the thing I'm wearing. That was insane. And then these flash rings as well. You know, sorry, Ezra gave me to this on the red carpet while we were like working together. But this is one of the original flash rings from the movie, from the actual set.
Wow.
Which is just insane. And I got to, you know, I just got it. It's just like so cool. But you know, there's like, yeah, it was a really amazing feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine.
And you realize how tight and uncomfortable it is.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
I would really love to see anybody try and fight crime in an actual superhero costume, because they're so not designed for like, they look amazing, my God, but like actually do anything in them, bloody hell, no, they're not practical. We would leave that to the comics imagination, but yeah, they were really tight and they were really hot, and we had like fans and cooling systems and stuff like that. You know, on Aquaman, like they actually had cooling on the inside of Jason Momoa's
Really?
Jason costume as Aquaman. They would run cold water through it, and I think they did it with Ben Affleck as Batman as well. And they'd stick out ice into them, and this cold water would just fill their suits so they could just cool down inside them because they're spending so much time filming. And so we had like similar devices, but it was so tight we couldn't afford to run anything through them. But we had like ice. This amazing crew that just looked after us, keeping us cool, because we shot through the summer, and some of those days and nights were just really, really hot. And we got a lot of like, you know, drinks, top ups and things. It was so great. It was, you know, everyone really looked after you in those things because you haven't come.
Yeah.
Amazing. But it was awesome. It was very equally balanced with feeling on top of the world and being tall and powerful. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, because in the film, you know, they're joking about how uncomfortable it is, so that's like completely reflected into what it's actually like.
Yeah, exactly. They're not practical, bro. I wouldn't recommend wearing them for anything.
So, did you have the opportunity to perform any stunts, or can you share any interesting, you know, stories about working with the stunt team?
Yeah, there was a bunch that we had to do. I mean, for me, I was less heavily involved with the stunts. Ezra wanted to do as much of their own stunts as possible, and I think they actually did end up doing like, I want to say 97% of their own stunts. Yeah, Ezra was fully committed to like throwing himself into it, to like jumping over stuff, to like being suspended, to falling, to sliding down things. Like Ezra was fully there to be like the person that they were going to use. Ezra was like, had these two amazing stunt doubles called Joey and Adam, who we became very close to. And if there was ever a time that, you know, it was me and Ezra, it would normally just be one of the boys and Ezra. Like it wouldn't be me, but Ezra would just be fully throwing himself into it. And it was so great to see. There was a couple of occasions that, a couple of stunts that we didn't do, but the boys did them. And my God, they did such a great job. And they're like, there's like little moments that you catch and you see and you're just like, holy crap, they really threw themselves. Like there's this one stunt where they're running from the Russians, and Ezra's, you know, the Barrys are carrying Supergirl out of there, and she's like really unwell and skinny, and Batman's just like trying to find any route, and they like jump over this edge into this like bowl, right, with the ball hanging above the hole in the bottom, and they throw themselves off that thing. And in order to film that, they actually had to shoot the boys, Adam and Joey, on a 40-foot platform falling into boxes, and they just tumbled off. Then they did it a few times. Like those are the kind of stunts that can like really hurt, like from 40 feet. Like it's really extreme, and it requires a certain amount of like courage to do that. And they just did it. They just threw themselves over, and they were absolutely fine because they're total pros. And yeah, that was their job. You know, they rolled over things. They did such an amazing job. And like, I'm getting pulled. But yeah, there's a couple of stunts I did as well. One of them arguably was the running. Young Barry, when we see young Barry entering the Speed Force in the Flash costume, that was me. You know, when they go, have we gone back far enough? You know,
yeah,
and skidding to a hop stuff. Like I never had any stunt training for that, and Ezra did a whole week of like running on the spot. Got to Thursday and was done. Like Ezra, they did all the backwards running of the Chrono Bowl stuff and all the running that the Flash would do, take after take after take. Like Ezra was spent, and like, you know, couldn't have anyone else do it. So they called me in and they were like, Ed, we need you to come in and do some running. And I had Ezra sort of like hobbling off, like being a total pro, but just being like, I need you to step up for me on this one, bro. And I was like, I got you. And Andy being on the set. So Ezra was being lying down in their trailer getting a massage because their legs were seizing up like iron. I had Andy on the set with me, and I had like Michael Lerman, who was the first AD, all of them giving me instructions on what I had to do. And we did a couple of takes, and I'd never run like the Flash before like that, being dangled off like 4 inches from the floor, felt put on the bottom of her feet whilst running in a superhero costume with like a stunt harness, like all these cameras like running around you, and me running on Perpex glass, like just slipping, run. And also for the first time, like developing the run of young Barrow, like that was a big moment as well, because Ezra had done some of it, but we hadn't really explored it an awful lot. So the Flash has been had that work, you know, with the fingers and the sort of casting and the sort of like backhand thing, whereas young Barry was kind of like a bit more like thuggish, kind of like reckless teenager vibe. So he has like fists when he runs and stuff, like, because he hasn't figured out that, you know, if you slice it and, you know, move through it, you can actually cast the slice through easier, whereas young Barry's just punching through. So we discovered that sort of language of running and things, and I had Ezra on the mic, on the phone on one hand, like being like, okay, what? I want you to do it again. Like, I want you to do it like this. And they would tell me like, try like swing your arm less. And then I had Andy over there being like, what, it's slower, like blah, blah, blah. And then Michael Lerman being like, you good? Like, we got to go. And so there was like a day like that where I had to do some running. And then, yeah, and that was pretty fun. And there was a couple of things, like, we got thrown off a ledge at one point, or we got thrown up, pushed across the floor, like dragged, and then, you know, being yanked to a stop. And then like super slow motion stuff when like, when the bit of metal goes through the Barry's arm, you know, like all that kind of stuff. Like the front one is Ezra, and the back one is me as young Barry. So I had to like sort of more, you might again dance, you know, it was like slow motion. Then I get caught and the metal's in it, and he brings it back around, and the other Barry's like, okay, what you need to do is phase, like get it out, and then that becomes the start of the building of the Dark Flash.
Talk about Dark Flash. How was that created?
That was a very, that was some heavy filming we did then as well. So Ezra and I went in and did the prosthetics as well when we had to do the reverse, because obviously we had to reverse everything. The prosthetics took 2 hours, I think, plus maybe 3 hours to put on just on the face. And then getting into that costume, of all the superhero costumes, that was actually the comfortablest and the most comfy.
Really?
It was probably the hardest because you were truly zipped up under lots of big layers.
Yeah.
But it was quite sick because it kind of moved a bit better as like all one piece. It felt quite comfortable. It didn't have to be skin tight. And so, yeah, we spent time in that, and it was okay. You know, it wasn't too bad. But we had Ezra wore it, obviously. I wore it as well, and then a stunt double called Rick English, who you don't know of yet, you really should. He is the boss. He's Ghost Rider. He was Batman in the movie. He's been James Bond, Daniel Craig. He is the go-to motion guy, and he is one of the most well-respected stuntmen in the industry. He's a legend of the game. And God, right, he was dressed as the Dark Flash, right? And we'd figured out a bit of fight choreography that Ezra and I had gone through in our own way. And we had the two stunt guys, Joey and Adam, giving us advice on it. And then one day, Rick English jumped into it because we needed me as the other one, and because there's 3 of them in the scene. So Rick English became the Dark Flash first. We got into it, and Rick was talking about the blade and then like coming towards and charging and slicing. And Ezra and I were quite like, yeah. So he'd charge it up here, and then he'd lunge like this, right? And I'm like, yeah, like that. And Rick English was like, so yeah, what you want is what? And like fucking flew us like this. And we shot ourselves. Like, dude was like real. Like, the fear you felt was like, oh my God. He said, Jesus Christ. Like, if that was actually real, like, he made it look so real. It was insane, but he didn't get anywhere close. He was like that far away. So we were completely safe, but he just fucking threw this punch, and I was like, oh, we're like, that was so frightening. But that's the thing about these people in their crafts. Like, when it comes to like stage fighting, you as an actor go, yeah, I can stage fight. It's like, nah, stuntman can stage fight. Like, they all know it. And like Sasha stunt double as well. Like, she was wicked. She was like whipping kicks left, right, and center, jump down. Like, Sasha was awesome in the movie as well, but like, so was Ezra. Like, we were all great. I know that we did a really good job of it, but the stunt guys, man, they can do some shit. Like, I don't know if you saw the footage from the Batgirl where the girl like backflips in and like hits the Christmas tree and it falls to the deck.
Yeah.
My God, like the cojones to do that. And we did that in one take. That was one take. Nailed it. One take and they nailed it.
Wow.
Like, everyone was like gearing up for this moment. Everyone was like, they spent like a few hours just preparing everything to be like, right, we're going to go for it first time. Let's get ready. Girl like flips in and hits the thing. Like, I dive away like underneath it and it hits the deck. Done. They rolled footage and they were like, that's it. Like, these people are so good, right? These people are utter pros. It's so amazing.
Top of the game.
Yeah, I think that's probably why Tom Cruise like has so much respect for doing stunts, because he's like,
oh yeah,
you know, they do amazing stuff, but Tom Cruise is like wanting to do what they do because the rush you get from doing those things as well is just amazing. Yeah.
It's just another level, and there's no job like it for sure.
No, there really isn't, and especially for me, you know, as like an actor who hasn't really worked on film, like for me, it's like wild as well. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe the invention of this new technology, the volume capture, probably means that they might use like this concept again. You know, if it's a success, you know, you can basically compile an actor's work for a whole movie in about like a week or two. You could just have like an acting double doing my job. I don't know. It involves an enormous amount of tech and post-production to do it as well. But, you know, the world's moving in fascinating ways. You know, like the way they shot Lion King, if you've ever listened to Jon Favreau talk about it on podcast Smartless, he really goes into depth about like the levels of technology and the willingness that he has as a director, producer, whoever, to like, you know, use it now in film, because technology is, you know, is still such a rapid rate that new stuff's coming along. So it's amazing, really.
And with all the AI developments and all that stuff now, I mean, who knows where it's going to go?
Who knows where it's going to go? I mean, it would be amazing if this volume capture technology starts, you know, becoming a thing. And I'll feel so proud to be like part of the pioneering expeditions to use that on a full feature scale. Yeah.
Absolutely. You'll be in like a hall of fame for the volume technology, you know, among the pioneers.
The first. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. There's a lot to be learned from this one experience, I'm sure, by the guys who even were using it. You know, like next time we'll make sure that you don't, I don't know, like hair might be important or something.
Looking back at your sort of entire experience on The Flash as a whole, what's the key thing that you'd say you've learned from working on the film? And also, if you had the chance to relive the experience, is there anything you'd change?
Great question. The thing I probably learned most on that is just be kind to everyone. Like, truly, you know, we think about the depths of ourselves, of our own like thoughts, emotions, whatever. You know, you never know what anyone's going through, and everyone there was trying to do their best. And I think knowing that like no one's ever trying to be bad and no one's ever trying to be like on your toes or, you know, muck up something deliberately. If that happens, just know that people are human. Like, just be kind, just be sensitive, just listen and respect. And that was the biggest thing for me, was that, you know, it don't have to be an arsehole in this industry. You really don't. You know, we hear the phrase diva tossed around a lot, and it's one of those phrases that kind of makes the industry look shamish. Like, you kind of go, oh God, it gets a bad name if there's like a diva on the set or there's a diva on the stage or something. But really, it's people just caring, you know, people just caring for their craft and what they do, and they want to do it the best that they can. So being nice and respecting people and knowing that just the way they do things is like the most important thing that you could learn from working in a close environment. If I could go back and change one thing, oh God, I mean, maybe one day I dropped a line, you know, like sent human error. But I think even, you know, even from the mistakes you make, like you learn stuff. Like, I remember like knowing that I needed to hit a certain mark, or being close to the camera, or like knowing where the eye line is, or like I got these things wrong. Like, those are fine mistakes to make, but I was able to learn. And I had like, you know, people around me who were willing to tell me and teach me about what needed and what they did. And, you know, they didn't want me overlapping lines on Ezra when I spoke because they needed Ezra's clear. I learned about that. I learned that, you know, eye line focus for Ezra, I needed to be this close to the camera, like sometimes actually my cheek against the thing so that, you know, Ezra could get the proper eye line and delivery of line. And, you know, just the experience was so enriching that even going in as green or as fresh as I was, you know, being such an open sponge to all of it, it didn't care if it was correct or a mistake to me. It was like, this is learning, this is practice, this is a space that I feel comfortable in enough to go wrong and to fuck up, but not feel bad about it at the end of the day. So when you're handed that experience and a positive one like that, you learn as much as you can.
Yeah.
And you take on the mistakes as well that you made. So I wouldn't actually change a thing, bro. You know, in fact, I'd probably go back and try to make more. So I've already learned more. But, you know, that's, it was so, I mean, Barbara Muschietti and Marianne Jenkins and Michael Disco, the producers on the movie, created such an amazing atmosphere for us all. And it felt so kind and protected. And the way that Andy was able to then lead the movie because of that was just amazing. He is such a fascinating director to work with, in that his precision in what he does and what he knows the audience will think and what he knows will happen, you know, from an audience perspective, just speaks volumes about him being such a fan of the thing that he does.
Yeah.
You know, you can really tell that he loves to make movies and do stuff, and time doesn't matter to him. He'll rock up early and he'll finish last because he just loves making it. And that passion and that love for it comes through in the emotional telling of the story, I felt, as well. You know, knowing the stuff with Nora Allen and Barry's dad, like, you can really empathize with Barry in those situations. And that's because of Andy. You know, like, if that didn't want to be seen by Andy, you know, he would have cut Ezra's lines and just jumped to some more action shots or something else if he was a different director. But no, he was truly like, the heart of this movie matters and it should be shown along with all the bells and whistles. Like, we can add on CGI, we can add on the epic battles and stuff like that. I know how to do that too. But what I really know is how to get an audience invested. And he's a magician. He's called the maestro for a reason. You know, he's the conductor of the whole thing, and he did such a great job with Ezra and with all of us. And yeah, truly, truly amazing. I learned so much from him as well, you know.
Yeah. That's a fantastic answer there. Wow. And yeah, can't wait to see what Andy does next, because I think The Flash had that perfect balance of that heart and that sort of message with all the superhero sort of tropes and the conventions of that genre, and also some sort of fresh things. It was just a excellent balance of everything, you know,
right,
combined.
Yeah, it really was. It was a perfect concoction for him to. I think for Andy as well, like, you know, the wonderfully beautiful thing about Andy as well is that he was a real person, like, making a real piece of movie. Like, the position and the pressure that is under one person in that moment is a lot. And one of the most humbling things to me that he said is that he speaks to Taika Waititi about, like, directing movies that big and stuff, and they help each other. Like, there's this beautiful world that exists within this massive industry of film with these directors blasted all the way across. Like, they all are friends, they all talk to each other, they all discuss techniques and, like, ideas, and but they also just talk about other shit as well. Like, there's a beautiful world, all these people who work in these professions who are just people just trying to do a good job and do those things. And Andy, like, spoke to me, like, we spoke on very personal terms. Like, this is the thing, is we when we fame people, when we put them on a pedestal, we think we are unlike them, or they are unalike to us, but they aren't unakin. They are us. You know, we are them. They are people who have same issues and, you know, same stories and same passions and drive. They're just doing a different job to you. That's all that it is, you know?
Yeah.
And to know Andy and, like, meet his whole family was so special. There was a day when we went to play tennis and I met his parents and I met his newborn baby, Mikey, Mickey Rourke. He's so cute. And just to be put into that, you know, really lovely fold as well was so nice. Barbara was so kind. These people are amazing. These people are so great. And, you know, there was me, like, in there and just being, I'm just a kid from a field in Scotland. That's all I am. And I just was, like, in there just being, this is so special. And to, like, oh, this movie's going to be shown all over this world, you know, and it's going to have its moment in the sun. You know, it's just like, oh, I wish you all could like see what I saw and just be in part of this amazing world that people are in. You know, the people do exist in this world, and it's just so lovely. I wish we could all be there and be in it, but it's all relative, bro. I think like, oh, you know, like we can all have our own relative experiences to what, you know, to what a certain moment means to us. You know, if you've lived your whole life on caviar, probably a Big Mac is the best thing in the world for you to taste. But you know what I mean? Like, if you've never had one,
that
like,
makes sense.
Oh, like, I've only had caviar. Whatever. Like, it doesn't matter what your life or your background is. Like, there are special moments for us all. And if there's one thing I can sort of gain from this, is that I really do wish that people could have seen this movie through my eyes as clearly as possible, because they would utterly love this film, you know, even more.
I mean, that's the importance of sharing, you know, all these fabulous stories you have.
Yeah, yeah.
Once in a lifetime experience.
Truly once in a lifetime. I mean, I hope I get another go at it one day. I really do. I hope I have more stories to share. And you know, and it's great because I have a wealth of stories from like shows I've been on in London or, you know, around the world and stuff. Like, I have these great stories, and what's so special is you get to relive them with like the special people that were in that cast or watching that show, for example. But the thing about a movie is that like so many more people will see it, and it's like so many more people want to reach out and connect with it. You know, there's a finite number of people in every industry, but with this one, like people who weren't in the movie get invited in through us to like experience it with us, because I want to tell it all. I want to share it with everyone, because it was just crazy. It was just amazing. Yeah.
So let's move on to, you know, the present. What are you up to now? What are your future ambitions, you know, acting career-wise?
So I am doing another short film that I've written, and I'm hoping to direct. So I'm just applying for funding for that at the moment. So that's going to start soon, which I'm really hoping for, which is great. And then I'm also going into Frozen in the West End, which is
exciting.
Great. So that's really cool. So I'm going back to the West End, which is, you know, my love. Like, I love performing in the West End. I love that life and doing that, and it's a really good show. And you know, I'm going to be pretty happy there, I think. And then but I'd love. I honestly, mate, if another film came along or an opportunity to work with either DC or whatever, whoever, honestly, you know, I jump like a salmon. You know, I genuinely would. I'll be right then and there, say yes on the dot, on the spot, because I think there's you know, because like when you work in this business and you work as an actor, you know, or a budding or a trying actor, you know, I mean, not all of us are in Hollywood, like not all of us have that life, but you know, to be close to that or to be around that sort of stuff, to be back there again. It's sort of like when Frodo gets stabbed, you know, he's like, he can no longer live in the Shire, he has to go off. Dying lad, wait, no, that's so morbid. No, forget that. Scrap that. But
not
it is
quite the same.
It's Pandora's box, or like seeing what's on the other side of the door. You're like, oh, that's what happens in there, and you're like, oh, wow, that's so cool. And I would love to, dude, honestly, I would love to get back in there one. So, but no, I'm super happy to be going into Frozen and, you know, produce my next film and things. But yeah, just fun stuff always, bro. Just always keep it burning and the hope alive, and yeah, it's just awesome, man. It's great.
Amazing. So finally, what advice would you give, you know, any aspiring actors or just anyone in general who wants to work in the film industry?
If you want to work in the film industry, one, be nice to everyone you meet. You will meet on the way back down. You know, you never know if the person you're sitting next to is going to go onto greater things, and if you were a dick to that person, then you scarf your chances, because this industry relies so much on luck. You have to be prepared to wait for luck. That's one piece of advice I'd give as well. Like, you have to be prepared to sit by your phone and wait for your agent to call with an audition. You have to wait. You have to have patience. You have to have a certain amount of no's before you can appreciate the yes. You have to know in yourself if it's worth it, because it's not Hollywood movies, man. Like, there is a lot more to it. But if you really want to do it and you have that drive and you have that passion, don't stop. Just don't stop. Just keep going, keep pushing, keep trying, keep going to class, keep practicing. You can't be in something, make your own something, and like, just push. If you think you've tried, try again. Like, fail fast is a great piece of advice that Bill Hader uses. Fail fast. Try it. Fail at it. If you can't cry on this scene, go back and pick something else. If you can't sing that note this time, take a singing lesson. There are ways to keep going with this business, but you just absolutely have to know that you want to do it, because the alternative is taking a cushy 9-to-5, PAYE, get your pension, get your car, get your life sorted, grow up, live an adult, normal life. But if you really want to do it, balls to the wall, mate. You gotta get nuts. You gotta really want it, because it's not easy. And if you just keep doing those things that I've said, be nice, plug away, keep practicing, keep trying, keep believing, one day, you never know, like, who you could be next to or where you could be in those moments, and you sure as fuck want to be awake for them. And I certainly was. I was wide awake.
Exactly. I mean, you could be sitting next to somebody talking to them, and it could be Andy, like in your case.
Exactly. Like, I had no idea who that person was, and it just turned out to be the director of the scariest movie ever as well. Did you see it?
No, I'm not one for horror. I'm too much of a wimp for that sort of stuff.
Dude, it is so scary. I said to Andy, so when I got the job, I had a meeting with him, and he just called me into his office to like update me. And I had to tell him that he was to blame for the worst date of my life. I went on a date with a girl to go see it at the cinema, and it was really bad. I was really embarrassed because I'd been out with my mates the night before, and I was a little bit hungover. And I rocked up the cinema. I was late. She already bought the tickets and the popcorn, and I was just like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm really embarrassed. And we sat almost front row in an IMAX cinema and watched it. And oh my God, I was so scared and just like, this is too real. At one point, I screamed so loudly that people in the audience started laughing at me. Like, I was the only one that screamed. People were just pissing themselves. This lad down there who was having a horrible time whilst on a date with this girl. Dude, I told this story to Andy, and he was just streaming tears of laughter. He was just laughing his ass off. And I was like, I told him, I didn't get a second date because of you. Like, God, it was so good, but so scary at the same time.
Yeah.
You never know. You never know who that person might be. If I saw it out of context, I'd be like, oh, mate, you idiot. Like, how you are a wank. But no, he happens to be one of the nicest people on the planet. It's just really good horror.
Yeah. I mean, that's good advice for me there. If I go on a date, never horror then.
Do not take a girl on a date. The second piece of advice to budding trying actors: do not take a girl to a scary movie, because I don't know how she found it, but I found it so terrible. We found it embarrassing because I was just not up to par. I was so scared.
Well, Ed, it has been such a pleasure talking with you. Thank you ever so much for your time.
Dude, you're so welcome. It's been a pleasure to meet you too, Reds. Listen, this has been so much fun. I wish you all the best. I was so impressed by seeing people that you had interviewed in the past. So being on here is like kind of an honor. So thanks very much for having me, honestly.
Thank you. That means a lot. Before we go, do you have any social media or anything you want to plug?
Yeah, sure. Find me at Ed Kingsley Ways on Instagram. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you ever so much once again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week.
You too, Red. Thanks, man.